Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something truly fascinating. We're going to decode the hidden psychology behind human behavior. If you've ever felt a little, out of sync with how others process the world, or if you're the type who constantly analyzes the subtle dynamics of a room, well, this is going to be an absolute eye-opener.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever noticed a super subtle shift in someone's tone before they even realize they're upset themselves? Or maybe you're that person who stays relatively quiet in a crowded space, and you somehow understand the entire energy of the room before a single word is even spoken. Psychology actually suggests these aren't just awkward personality quirks or signs of being antisocial. No way. They are, in fact, the hallmarks of a highly evolved mind. You see, society absolutely loves to measure intelligence with standardized test scores and really rigid academic metrics. But applied behavior psychology, it tells us a completely different story. True brilliance actually manifests in our social intelligence and our capacity for pattern recognition. It's not just about what you know on paper. It's about how you intuitively navigate the world and the incredibly complex people around you.
Part 1. Decoding the deep thinker. Redefining the hallmarks of intelligence.
Part 2. Observing the social matrix. How deep thinkers gather data.
And this brilliantly illustrates how most people react to behavior emotionally. They look at surface-level data, right? Judging isolated events or taking rudeness entirely personally. But highly intelligent individuals, they watch for underlying patterns. If someone is dismissive, a high EQ person uses context building. They blend logic and empathy to interpret what that data actually points toward. It's like a giant puzzle, treating human behavior as a series of connected signals instead of just reacting to the surface noise.
This brings us to another fascinating intake mechanism: rejection sensitivity. Do you ever just sense a friend pulling away long before they ever admit anything is wrong? While it might sound like a vulnerability at first, in a high EQ brain, this is actually a heightened awareness of mood shifts that's been successfully repurposed into a high-level analytical skill. Your brain is literally constantly performing background analytical processing, picking up on flaws, patterns, and behavioral changes that everyone else completely misses. Now, I know exactly what you might be thinking. This constant hyper-awareness can be absolutely exhausting. And honestly, you're right. But this exhaustion is actually a profound testament to your deep thinking cognitive architecture. It proves your brain is fundamentally wired to read and decode complex human systems even when you aren't consciously trying to do so.
Part 3. The power of processing. What the brain does with the data. Let's move to and see how this builds. To avoid pure, raw emotional reactivity, the highly intelligent brain uses what's called the cognitive pause. Step 1 is simply receiving the stimulus. Step 2, and honestly this is where the real magic happens, is the pause. While others just react impulsively, you take a few microseconds to process. Step 3 is shifting to reasoning mode, and finally Step 4 is your response. This simple, split-second pause drastically improves your judgment.
To understand why that pause is absolutely critical, we have to look at cognitive control. When you pause, you are actively allowing the thinking part of your brain to override raw emotional impulses. You are literally shifting yourself out of a primitive survival mode, where reactions are just impulsive and defensive, and elevating your mind into a highly structured reasoning mode.
And that reasoning mode leads directly to cognitive flexibility. Notice the stark contrast here. Cognitive rigidity is that stubborn black and white thinking we often associate with a lower IQ, while the absolute smartest minds are the most mentally flexible. When new facts appear, they're willing and perfectly able to say, hey, I was wrong, and they adjust their thinking without ever feeling like their core identity is under attack.
So the crucial point is the actual science behind that mental flexibility, which is called metacognition. It's literally the ability to think about your own thinking. By observing their own thought processes from a third-party perspective, deep thinkers are able to drastically reduce their own bias and quiet their ego. And that's exactly what allows them to stay so incredibly adaptable.
Part 4. Connecting with true depth. Interacting without the surface noise. If you find surface-level conversation mentally draining, this is definitely for you. High IQ individuals have a chronic dislike for small talk. Why? Well, because your brain is wired for cognitive complexity. It naturally seeks out abstract and layered ideas. It entirely rejects predictable, everyday social scripts because, frankly, it's too busy grappling with existential questions and searching for fewer but much more meaningful relationships.
And when a deep thinker does actually choose to communicate, they do it with what psychology calls concept clarity.
Really smart people don't hide behind unnecessarily complex words just to sound intelligent. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they actively use their high logical structure and verbal reasoning to remove confusion for others. The rule is simple but powerful. If you can't explain a difficult concept simply, you don't truly understand the system behind it.
Part 5. Your internal compass. Finding validation from within.
Have you ever noticed that high EQ people are often the ones who, don't treat their birthdays like a massive week-long event, or they rarely post photos just to rack up social media likes? The science behind this is called an internal locus of evaluation. It essentially means you judge yourself by your own internal standards, rather than constantly relying on external validation from the crowd to feel important.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that secure self-esteem doesn't need public recognition to feel complete. It's incredibly easy for observers to mistake this trait for being aloof or disconnected, but it's actually the exact opposite. This kind of independence stems from an incredibly strong, deeply rooted sense of self-awareness.
As we wrap up this explainer, remember this. Being highly intelligent isn't just about how fast your brain works or acing a test. It's about carrying a mind that rarely rests and constantly seeks the why behind human behavior. If you recognized yourself in this today, let me completely reassure you. You aren't strange, and you certainly aren't antisocial.
Which leaves us with one final, totally empowering question. Are you just weird, or are you simply wired differently? I really hope this explainer has helped you see your social habits not as flaws, but as the sophisticated architecture of high emotional intelligence. Keep decoding your own mind and keep observing those patterns.